See the quarterback selected there. Represented by Geico, by the way. It feels good to Geico. Ryan Wilson, Titans GM Rand Carthon, two-time Super Bowl champ Brian McFadden.
I'm not the Titans GM.
Former Titans GM Rand Carthon, two-time Super Bowl champ Brian McFadden. Pete Briscoe over there, more than 30 years of NFL experience.
They're being paid like it.
That's true.
Yeah, well, you're right, Pete.
You know who's actually being paid a little bit better?
I am tired of being disrespected on this show.
I got some bad news for you.
I am tired of being disrespected on this show.
We're going to start with the quarterbacks who were drafted on day 2. We know that Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson went in day 1. And then we had our guy Carson Beck go at the top of round 3. B-Mac won the bold prediction. No quarterbacks in round 2. Carson Beck, top of round 3 to the Arizona Cardinals.
By a pick.
Counts. He wins.
We'll give it to
That's
you.
what we do here.
And then Drew
That's why
Aller,
they watch.
one of the most surprising picks in the entire draft. More surprising, Drew Aller going to the Steelers in round 3, or at 13, Ty Simpson going to the Rams?
For me, Ty Simpson going to the Rams. I don't think there's any question about that.
Bigger implications for sure. But let's talk about these day 2 quarterbacks here. Pete, how do you like the fit of Carson Beck in Arizona? And then what does it mean for Drew Aller in Pittsburgh? And who do we see first in terms of getting on the field?
Well, I'll start with Carson Beck. I think that was a smart move by the Cardinals. I think Carson Beck, we talked about it in previous programs, that he has the ability to be a starting quarterback in the league. And he has pedigree. He was once considered a top quarterback in the country. And things didn't work out at Georgia. He went to Miami, played some good football, played some inconsistent football at times as well. But the traits are there. And I think if you're the Arizona Cardinals and you look at quarterback room and you have Jacoby Brissett and you have Gardner Minshew, you don't have the answer in that room. So why not try and fix it? And so you bring him in, he plays. If he plays well, then maybe you do the Tyler Shuck treatment and go into next year and keep him there and try and build around him. If he doesn't play well, then you have major concerns. You go back into the draft, and there's precedence for that, for picking a quarterback a year after you take a guy in the second round.
I love this for Arizona, and here's why. When you talk about the uncertainty at the quarterback position when it comes to the prospects outside of Mendoza, of course, Ty Simpson, where would these other guys go? The Cardinals did not overdraft to go get Carson Beck. They got him in the ideal spot, in my opinion. And if you're Carson Beck, to Pete's point, this is the best situation you would like to walk into because of the contractual disagreement with Jacoby Brissett in the organization and the health of Gardner Minshew. And we can't forget, this is an entire new offense. So all the quarterbacks are potentially in the same level in terms of getting familiar with this new offense that they will have to orchestrate there out in Arizona. So if you're Carson Beck, man, you got to be elated. We all know guys would like to be drafted higher to be able to get more money. But in terms of the best spot for a guy like Carson Beck, it has to be the Cardinals.
And they got Jeremiah Love at 3, Chase Basantis, the tackle, guard at Texas A&M at the top of round 2. So this draft is shaping up to be pretty good for Arizona.
No, Monty and Mike LaFleur have done a good job of assembling this roster so far through the first couple picks in this draft. And I love the fit as well. We talked about Ty Simpson and his fit in the overarching scheme. We're going to call it the scheme moving forward and how he fit in that. And to me, there were only 2 other quarterbacks that fit that, and that was Carson Beck and Garrett Nussmeier, and being able to play their style of football. I love the fact of what Pete was talking about when you start talking about Tyler Shuck and Tyler Shuck's fit in New Orleans. Well, they took him at 40. He sat the first couple games, and then he came on, played with them, and became really good as he went. However, they still picked 8th, and they continued to build the team around him. The same thing could shape up next year for Carson Beck. He plays well as a 3rd-round pick, and now you come into next year's draft, no matter how many wins you have, and feel like you have a guy that you can build around, and now you can build the pieces around him, and you don't have to spend that high 1st-round pick. Now, the only caveat, B-Mac, is now he's 1 year closer to getting paid, which is different if you had him in the 1st round. And I'm not saying you should have taken him in the 1st round, but that's the difference in having that 1st-round quarterback where you got the 4 years plus the 5th-year option versus having a guy that you took in the later rounds. They get 1 year closer to the extension.
We mentioned Shuck, and let's be real. Shuck went in, played well enough that they said, let's bring him back, and he'll be the starting quarterback. We'll build it around him, give him a chance to succeed this year. If Shuck doesn't succeed this year,
100%,
they're going back in and getting another one. And I think that's what Arizona will probably do. If they put Beck in when they do put him in, and he plays like Shuck did last year, they'll give him another chance, I think, the following year to see if he can be that guy. You don't get much more than that. You have to prove it in the first 2 years, or they're going to go find somebody else who will be there.
100%. And Ryan knows this, and we've talked about it numerous times on all the shows that we've done together. And this is a rhetorical question. I'm not even asking this for the room, but this is the question that I've been bringing up at least over the last month. What's the difference between Tyler Shuck and Carson Beck?
No, that's right. And the other thing, to both Tyler Shuck and Carson Beck's advantage, we'll see with Carson, but Kellen Moore had a lot to do. I'm not taking anything from Tyler Shuck, but Tyler Shuck had played much better as a rookie than he did his last year at Louisville, number one. And I think Mike LaFleur has an opportunity and Carson Beck to maybe replicate that to some degree.
Yes, and again, here's the thing, right? Mike LaFleur has to prove himself. He not only has to prove himself as a head coach, because he is a first-time head coach, but he still needs to prove himself as a play caller in the National Football League, right? He went with Robert Saleh to New York with the Jets. That didn't fare so well. So then he goes and he's with Sean McVay at the Rams, but he was never the play caller.
He was never the play caller.
He was never the play caller. Exactly. So now, as Mike LaFleur takes on this journey of being the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, he has to not only prove himself as the head coach, you have to prove yourself as a play caller. The pedigree is there. We know who your brother is. We know everyone you've trained under. But now you have the opportunity to do so.
And not just proving that he can call plays in a consistent rate, but developing quarterbacks. Because this is his guy, Carson Beck. Carson Beck is his guy to develop. So a big-time point, because everybody gets mesmerized about he had that title as a play caller. But we all know he wasn't calling plays there for the Rams.
All right.
By the way, real quick, you see where they picked, what players on what side of the ball they picked.
Offense.
Yeah, well, there's an offensive head coach.
Well, let me ask you this to follow up on Pete's point, B-Mac, and if you want to defer until later, you can. But there's also a guy in Pittsburgh who is hired to develop quarterbacks. He's 62 years old, and he's developed a ton of quarterbacks.
Yep.
We now potentially in Pittsburgh, and I say we because I'm a Steelers fan, didn't play there, have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Let's assume Aaron Rodgers comes back. Why, or maybe you can say this is why would you draft Drew Aller with Mason Rudolph, with Will Howard, last year's 6th-round pick? So 50-50 on Aaron Rodgers. Let's start there. And then what is Drew Aller's role when you take him at the top of the 3rd round?
That's a great question, because everything we heard coming from Pittsburgh leading into this weekend of the NFL draft was they were high on Will Howard. We've heard Mike McCarthy talk about his sentiments in regards to Will Howard and the things he believes he can do. We've heard Omar Khan speak positive about Will Howard, right? So it made all of us think if Aaron Rodgers decides to call it quits and retire, they're okay in giving Will Howard the opportunity. And Omar said that to me at the Combine. And
Well,
then
what
they
other
go-
options would they have had if they didn't pick a quarterback?
Well, I'm not saying not to pick a quarterback. We all knew they were going to pick a
But if they
quarterback.
didn't, why not pump the guy up? He was going to be the quarterback.
Exactly. So did anything change, or they just felt like this was a need in terms of the depth or the lack thereof? Because it seems like they still don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do, right? So if Aaron Rodgers comes back, now it's a competition. You know what I mean? One individual will not be in the room in
Wait a
terms of
second.
the
If
4
Aaron
that we
Rodgers
see
comes
now.
back,
No,
what's
he's
the
saying a competition in the room. It's 4 spots.
It's 4 spots.
There's 4 people in there for 3 spots.
For 3 spots.
And it's probably the 2
Aaron-
youngest guys competing against
Yeah.
each other, and they're not going to get rid of the guy they just drafted.
Yeah,
probably.
if Aaron comes back. But if Aaron doesn't come back, so you okay with the room being how it is? You might bring in another younger guy just for, camp purposes, but outside of that.
If they play with those 3 guys this year, that's called tanking.
They don't tank in Pittsburgh.
They don't
B-Mac,
take it.
Well, you know what? They're not going to be a very good football team. Let's be real. No matter which one of them starts at quarterback, they're not going to be a very good football team. If Aaron Rodgers plays, they have a chance to be a good football team. They don't if the other guys.
See, and my sentiment to it, the moves that they've made this offseason, right? Trading for Michael Pittman, adding all these other guys to this team. Rico Dowdle.
That's not tanking.
To me, it shows that Aaron Rodgers
Rodgers
is
gonna play.
coming back.
He's playing.
And now
But Omar, what did Omar tell you about Aaron Rodgers at the Combine? Didn't
He said he expected a decision sooner than later.
Yeah, I
And-
think
and-
they have the
and-
decision. I think they have the decision.
And the same thing we saw last year, right? The waiting game. But they had a decision. They knew Aaron was going to return.
Can I ask a bigger question? And this, I'm not trying to dump on Drew Aller, and I hope he's celebrating and have a great night. And, Will Howard was, I think fans liked that pick last year because they thought they were getting value in the 6th round. Do the Steelers have a drafting quarterback evaluation problem in post-Big Ben world? Because Kenny Pickett went 20th, in 2022, and that did not work out. And you're not going to hit a home run every single quarterback. And since then, they've gone through the Russ Wilsons and the Mitch Trubisky's and the Aaron Rodgers, and I understand that, but they've drafted the 2 other quarterbacks now, Will Howard and Drew Aller. And maybe it's unfair for the day 3 guys, but they're not close to finding their franchise QB.
I think short answer, yes. But then I think it's also an unfair way to put it, because this is something Mike McCarthy's new to, right? He hadn't had the opportunity to put his spin on his football team. And then we're talking about when Mike Tomlin was there, we're talking about a defensive-minded coach and had a revolving door at the offensive coordinator position. How many different offensive coordinators have come through there? And every time you change coordinators, the scheme changes, which means the players that you drafted or acquired for the other coach don't necessarily fit the coach that you have now. And so you're going to have that revolving door. So short answer, yes, but I think there's more context there as to why.
The other thing is, it's also the valuable lesson that when you have that guy, you're going to be chasing to find him for a long time till you do get that guy. It doesn't happen where you get Peyton Manning and then Andrew Luck. It doesn't work out that way usually. So they tried to chase it. They drafted the kid, didn't work out. They got a lot of veterans, didn't work out.
So why are you mad at the Rams?
Huh? Because I think that guy, I don't think he's the long-term answer either. That's
But they're
just
trying.
They're trying.
But now, go back. Now New England doesn't look as crazy as they did probably in the past when they've taken quarterbacks in the second and the third, because they always had, even though they had Tom Brady, they had the GOAT, they were winning. They always had that guy in the hopper just in case.
Yeah.
Right? Just in case. I mean, you're right. The Packers, you had behind Brett Favre, you had Matthew Hasselbeck, who went on to become a starting quarterback. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, we know those names.
Brunell was a backup
And so it's
Kurt Warner.
You have teams, you have people that
That's why
say
you do it,
draft a quarterback every year. I don't know if I believe in that. But having the right backup quarterback, whether you take that person in the second or you take that person in the third, having that right player that you believe in, that in the event QB1 goes down, we have a guy we can win with, but then it also gives you some value picks later because you can actually move on from
They believe, the Steelers clearly believe more in Aller than they do in Will Howard. They drafted one in the 3rd round and one in the
It could
second.
also just be a competition.
And also, too,
Competition.
This is a
They're
new
going to have a
regime.
competition.
Young person's competition.
Right, this is a new regime. Mike McCarthy, even though he said pretty good things about Will Howard, he didn't draft Will Howard, right? The coaching staff that draft Will Howard last year is no longer
But Omar
there.
drafted him.
Yeah, he was a part, but in terms of the coaching staff, offensively, when they do their due diligence and studying tape, they all got to be on one accord and saying, you know what, that's our guy. So they probably felt really good about Drew Aller in the ceiling. They probably feel like he has a higher ceiling than Will Howard, unless, worst case scenario, if there's no Aaron Rodgers, it's a competition.
If there's no Aaron Rodgers, how many games do they win?
5. 4.5 is the over-under.
I'll give you 4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to Pete's point that he's been making
That might not be a bad thing, though.
for the 30 years he's been covering the league, there's always next year being back. You can draft a quarterback
You get a
next year.
quarterback next year, and teams have drafted quarterbacks and come back and got it.
And I'm okay. Listen, I'm okay. This felt high because Steelers do have other needs, but I'm okay taking a quarterback every single year on day 3 or day 2 if you like the guy enough. Clearly, you like Drew Aller. But now it's time for your Geico feel-good moment, and we're turning to the Houston Texans, who have picked 36